أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. On the first day, we explained to you what was sacred time. On the second day, we disclosed to you Dajjal's demolition of the system of sacred time. And on the third day, we advised you how to return to sacred time. On the fourth day, we explained the methodology for the study of the Quran, and we applied that methodology to Surah Al-Rum. And on the fifth day, we applied that methodology to part of Surah Al-Kahf. And last night, we went to the most important event still remaining to occur in history, prophesied by Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, the return of Nabi Isa ﷺ, the true Messiah, the son of the Virgin Mary. I hope it will be possible for me to come back briefly, inshallah, in the summer. And if I do, then there's more, inshallah, that I can teach. To teach you some more what is in the Quran. But what I write in my books is far more comprehensive than what I teach. And there are now 33 books in my collection of books. To my knowledge, only about 12 have been translated to French. But now we make the effort to ensure that all the books are translated to French. But in the same way that if you read Shakespeare in English and then you read Shakespeare in Urdu, it won't be the same. So when you read me in English, that is a more faithful presentation of my truth, my scholarship, than when you read me in a translation. Those of you who are comfortable in English, for those of you who are comfortable in English, I will send to Amin the complete list of all my books in English, and he can send you the titles all by email or by WhatsApp. And if you wish to order the books in English, just inform him. And then you can order the books and read them in English. However, for the books in French, at this time, we're hoping that the 12 books already translated would soon be available. And then we'll be able to translate the rest as well. And so I want to leave with you the advice that you not only listen to my lectures, but you also read and study the books. So now then we turn to the first question. And the question is, when Allah speaks about the young men who fled into the cave, He says that they slept in the cave for 300 years. And then the Quran goes on to say, وَازْدَادُوا تِسْعًا, and then they added 9 more. So now the question is the 300 sacred time and the 309 secular time? That's correct. That is correct. The 300 is 300 years in sacred time, which is lunar time. And 309 would be secular time, Dajjal's time, which is solar time. For those who insist that solar time is equally valid as lunar time for counting the years. The question we ask of them is, if you count with solar years, how do you define a month? They don't have an answer. Next question.
Thank you. The question is, what is the link between Ya'juj and Ma'juj and Dajjal? Are Ya'juj and Ma'juj, Gog and Magog, paving the road for Dajjal?
Surah Al-A'raf of the Quran gives one answer. After this passage in Surah Al-A'raf, where Allah speaks about the law of the Sabbath and how this town, which was by the sea, lived by fishing. The town is Constantinople. I wish I had the time to ask you, how do we know it's Constantinople? We don't have the time for that. And he tested them by preventing the fish from coming every single day of the week except the day of the Sabbath. And when some of them went fishing on the day of the Sabbath, Allah cursed them and put a curse upon them. Kunu kiradatan khasi, be apes, despised. The next ayah in Surah Al-A'raf says, وَإِذْ تَأَذَّنَ رَبُّكَ لَيَبْعَثَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ مَنْ يَسُومُهُمْ سُوءَ الْعَذَابِ. That not only am I going to curse them to live like monkeys, but I am now going to send against them those who will inflict upon them until the last day the worst possible punishment. This has to be Al-Masih al-Dajjal, and this has to be Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Who else is going to be sent to mankind to punish until Judgment Day? And so, yes, there is something common between Dajjal and Gog and Magog. Number one, that they are sent as punishment. Number two, that they will continue to punish until Judgment Day. The next relationship between Dajjal and Gog and Magog is to be found in the verses of the Quran pertaining to Jerusalem. That Dajjal wants to rule the world from Jerusalem. He wants to establish a state of Israel in Jerusalem and cause that Israel to rule the world. And in order to succeed in doing that, he has to bring the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own. And so he uses Gog and Magog to bring the Jews back to Jerusalem to reclaim it as their own. And so Gog and Magog operate in collusion with Dajjal. It is possible for me to offer the evidence, if I have enough time, that Al-Masih al-Dajjal is the one who brought modern Western civilization into being from Western Christianity. And Gog and Magog are those who control power in modern Western civilization. And so there is a lien between Dajjal and Gog and Magog. Don't make the mistake of saying that they're the same. They're not the same. The Dal will appear as a person. He'll be a Jew. He'll be a young man, powerfully built, with the sideburns. But Gog and Magog are two tribes of people, two communities of people. So do not make the mistake of identifying them with each other. Next question.
We have a question from the chat from our viewers.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The question is from Soraya. She says that you have been mentioning many times that you are fishing for new students. What are the criteria?
If you are viewing this session on the internet and you want to ask a question, at least do this for me. Tell me from which city you ask the question. That's all.
So you can add to the question. She's asking also what are the criteria for women? Is it open for women also?
Yes, the reason why I fish for students, because my teacher was a Sufi Sheikh, and his teacher was a Sufi Sheikh. But I have chosen, while recognizing that tasawwuf is the very heart of the deen, I have chosen not to identify myself as Sufi for one reason. And that is that I don't want to have to defend any Sufi religious practice which is not based on the Sunnah. That's why I ask for students rather than disciples. Whosoever recognizes me as his teacher or her teacher, you are my student. But Firadashiyam, I don't want gramophone records as my students. I want people who think and people who would not accept my opinion unless and until they are convinced that I am correct. My dream is to leave behind me when I die students who will climb the mountain higher than I have ever reached. And if you are to climb the mountain, the first step as a Muslim is that you must recite the Quran the way that Allah recited it to Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. So if you are not reciting the correct juz every day, and you do not complete or khatam the Quran every month, and you are male, don't say you are my student. Next question.
The question is, as you mentioned about the three Paxes, Pax Britannica, America, Judaica, we can see that for the first one, Pax Britannica, the main tool which was used was the military power in the sea. While with Pax Americana, it's the military power in the sky. What would be the tool for the third Pax?
It's a difficult question. Pax Judaica has already begun. However, Pax Judaica cannot be established until after the Malhama, or the Great War. And no one knows what the world is going to be like after the Great War. However, I can venture one comment. I am sure it is not adequate. There's much more to the subject than I can see at this time. But of one thing I'm certain, and that is that the Pax Judaica will not be established without slavery. So while Pax Britannica had naval power and Pax Americana had aerial power, Pax Judaica will have brute power, naked power used to oppress with no apologies. Oppression to such an extent that a man will pass by a grave and would roll on the grave and say, I wish I were in the grave rather than the dead man, not for religious reasons, but because of brute oppression. Those who are not convinced by what I say can continue to live in Paris or close to Paris. But those who accept what I say to be correct would flee from the West, go back to Morocco, go back to Algeria, and seek refuge in the remote countryside if you have capacity to think. And if you are African, then say thank Allah that you are from Africa, because Africa has so much of the countryside that will be safe. Next question.
We have a brother from Africa who is writing a question, but he is not giving his city. He is from Africa.
Please, if you don't mind, if you have some respect for me, please, if you let us know what part of the world you are coming from. You come from when you ask a question, if you don't mind. Go ahead.
The question he asks was, you mentioned in your teachings that whoever leaves Africa is losing connection to the divine. What is so special about Africa?
The land of Africa is spiritual. The land of the modern West now has become godless.
The question is from a sister in Belgium. She is asking, why are women prevented from reading Quran on their menstrual cycles? And she adds, some ulama says that she can read the Quran if she is not touching the phone.
Okay. There's only one verse of the Quran on this subject, and it does not prohibit a woman from touching the Quran when she's having a menses. And this is Surah Al-Waqi'ah. لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ. That none can touch this Quran other than those who are clean and pure. If this is to be understood literally, then this is a false statement. Because any Tom, Dick, and Harry can get a copy of the Quran. Anybody can do it. So this cannot be understood literally. When Allah speaks about the Quran in this ayah, He's not speaking about a written text. He's speaking about a spoken text. The Quran means a recitation. So even though the recitation is there in the Law al-Mahfuz, it's not something material to be touched literally, even up there. And none can touch this, indicating that this recitation, even there in that world, the Mawad Mahfuz, only the angels have access to it, number one. Number two, that none can penetrate this Quran to reach its depths except those whose hearts are faithful to Allah. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا. A people who firmly live in accordance with the implications of the declaration that our Rabb is Allah. They are the only ones who can penetrate this kitab. The rest, even with a PhD from Sorbonne, will not be able to even scratch this Quran. As a consequence, we find nothing in the Quran to prohibit a woman from reciting the Quran when she is in the menses. The Prophet, Allah's blessing be upon him, even ordered for Salatul Eid. He ordered women who are having their menses to join the Salatul Eid. But we have absolutely no evidence whatsoever, not from the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, who are the ones who should be teaching us, and certainly not from the Prophet himself, that the Prophet ﷺ ever said or gave permission that a woman who is having her menses can recite the Quran. We do not have such evidence. I have nothing more to say on this subject.
Should I repeat the question? So he's speaking about the allegiance, the bay'ah, which will be given in front of the Kaaba. Will it happen against the authorities
of the Saudi government because of the normalization of the relationship?
Because of the relationship with the Zionist state. Let me translate the question first.
The bay'ah is an oath of allegiance, and it belongs to our political system. It is an instrument of the political legitimization of power. You cannot transpose the bay'ah from a Khilafah state to a modern secular nation state. Khalifa is to be obeyed on the condition that the Khalifa is obeying Allah's law and the law of the Prophet ﷺ. That is the bay'ah to be given in the Khilafah state. What is the definition of a Khilafah state? Ya Dawood, inna ja'alnaka khalifatan fil ard. O David, alayhi salam, we hereby appoint you as Khalifa on earth. Now that Khalifa is established and you have a Khilafah state, how does it function? فَاحْكُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ بِالْحَقِّ وَلَا تَتَّبِعِ الْهَوَىٰ فَيَدِلَّكَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. Establish rule, establish law, establish governance on the basis of truth, and truth does not come from Washington. Truth does not come from a university. Truth does not come from Parliament. Truth comes from Allah. The Ottoman Empire had the external form of the Khilafah state, preserved until 1924. But the internal substance of the Khilafah state was lost. The Ottoman Empire resisted secular constitution. The Ottoman Empire believed that the Sharia was sufficient. But modern Western civilization was so infecting the minds of the people that the young Turks and those who supported them were demanding a constitution. Sultan Abdul Hamid had to give way, and he had to proclaim a constitution early in his rule. But when he felt himself strong enough, he threw it out of the window. And as his power began to weaken, he was forced to bring back the constitution. All over the world today, law is secular law. Rule is secular rule. Governance is secular governance. Nowhere on the face of the earth today, even in Iran, is Allah's law supreme. And so now we live in a world in which bay'ah is given as an oath of allegiance to the state, not to Allah's truth. On Judgment Day, those who are faithful to Allah and the truth which come from Allah, they will be in one Jannah. And those who have accepted the secular state to be valid and who legitimize or validate the secular state by voting in elections will now be raised in the Jannah of those who have abandoned the Khilafah. So I will not myself ever give the bay'ah to any secular state or any government. One last comment. The Sufis hijackers. The Sufis are hijackers. They have hijacked the term bay'ah. They should not have done that. Now the Sufi Sheikh has his disciples, a murid. And the murid becomes the murid of the Sheikh by giving the bay'ah to the Sheikh. And this is stealing an institution of our political system. Next question.
Mohammed from Tourcoing.
From where?
Tourcoing. It's in the north here.
Of France.
North of Paris, France.
Okay.
He's asking, is Jesus alayhi salam now in the same dimension or the same process as Ahlul Kahf?
The Quran says, وَرَافِيُكَ إِلَيَّ. The Quran never said that the young men in the cave would be raised to Allah. No. So they're not in the same dimension of time. One is approaching absolute time. The other is in cosmic time. Next question.
The question is, you said that the garbage is being poured everywhere, even in Africa. So the question is, this concept of retreating, isn't it something that should be lived from the inside as a state of mind, as a state of being?
Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran provides for us the guidance of how to respond to the oppression of Akhir Zaman. وَإِذِ اعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ. And when you turn away from them and that which they worship other than Allah, flee to the cave. But the cave is only a midway point. They're just resting in the cave for a night before they proceed further. They were leaving, of course, to find a place of safety, of security, but most of all of freedom. Freedom to live with the people who worship Allah. And that is the remote countryside. So this is not an internal journey. This is a literal journey. Next question.
The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has mentioned about 30 false messiah coming after his death. But we have not seen these 13 false messiah yet. What is your opinion on this hadith?
Before we answer this question, let me step back a little to the last question. When the heart longs for truth, when the heart is beating with sacred time, when the heart is not corrupted, that heart is filled with pain and suffering when you live in the cities of the modern world. That heart longs for quietness, for solitude, for peace. That heart longs to listen to the singing of the birds. That heart longs to listen to the sound of the wind passing through the leaves of the tree. That heart longs to listen to raindrops falling from the sky. And so that heart longs to leave Paris, go far from Paris. Paris is Jahannam. That heart longs for Jannah in the remote countryside. When that heart is a woman, she will hold the hand of her husband. Take me to the remote countryside so I can have peace and harmony with nature. But when that heart worships the dunya, worships the euro, that heart says, this is heaven, Paris, I'll never leave. And when such a woman is brainwashed by the dunya, and the husband wants to leave, she says to the husband, you could go, I'm staying here with the children. What should you say to such a woman? Answer, I'm going to miss you, my dear, because I'm leaving. You could say, yeah. Next question.
Oh,
No,
yes.
I had to answer the question.
Yes, about the 13 dajjals.
The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, وَيُبْعَثُ مَعَهُ جَجَّالُونَ كَذَّابُونَ قَرِيبٌ مِّنْ 30. That there will be close to 30 those who would be false messiahs, close to 30. And we have numerous instances in history of people who have claimed that they are the Messiah. The last one who created quite a large community supporting, following, was a man in India. A man in India whose name was Ghulam Ahmad. And when he was confronted with the prophecy that the Messiah who is to come is the son of the Virgin Mary, Maryam, he said, I came from Maryam. So this is one of the 29 false messiahs. Yeah. Next question.
What do you think about a woman living without her husband if he is not willing to live with her?
If your husband is worshipping the dunya and does not want to leave the city, and you recognize that your fate is in danger and that of your children is in danger, and living in the city, then the first step of the road is to get off that ship. So long as you remain on board that ship, when the ship sinks, you will sink with it. So you're not asking for a divorce as yet. No. You're getting off the ship, meaning you're going to part from him and go to a place of security and safety in the remote countryside. But you don't do that by yourself alone. You have to be part of a community so you get some protection. After you have gone to a place of security and safety with your children, if you succeed in doing that, then comes the next step. And that is where you put pressure on him, urging him, come and join us in the countryside. And if he still refuses to join you in the countryside, then you have the option of either waiting or seeking freedom from that marriage. Next question.
The question is regarding the modification of the tashkil in the Quran. Is this affecting our recitations in terms of following the prophetic recitation? And secondly, why is nobody speaking about this subject?
The damage from the false tashkil is not felt in the recitation. The damage is in the understanding of the Quran. I asked you a question last night. I said, how do we explain when our prophet has prophesied the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, and the Quran has declared that it explains all things, and I have provided you ample evidence from the Quran supporting the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. How do you explain that Sheikh al-Azhar, the head of Al-Azhar University, not one, two of them, have rejected the belief in the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam? Sheikh Shaltut issued a fatwa that Jesus is dead, not coming back. How do we explain so many eminent scholars of Islam for whom we have tremendous respect, who all declare Jesus is not returning? How do we explain my own teacher of blessed memory, who I consider to be a fountain of knowledge? And this teacher of mine has put it down in writing that the belief in the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam is only a prophecy of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salam. Nothing more than that. In other words, he could not find in the Quran anything which supported the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. How do we explain this? That's the question I asked you to answer yesterday. You might spend a long time before you can answer that question. My answer is that all the proof in the Quran concerning Nabi Isa alayhi salam's return all require some thinking. But the last prophet, which is as plain as daylight, that he is the sign of the last hour, that was corrupted with a clever piece of substitute that we Tashkil. That he is not the sign of the last day, he is the knowledge of the last day. And if anyone recognized that this was false, they lacked the courage to say so. Because the world would respond and say, this man is saying there's a mistake in the Quran. This man is a kafir. That's what they did to me. But Allah created me and transformed me during my life from what I was before a green banana I used to be. And then the transformation came to me until I reached that stage when I don't care two peanuts. But what do you think? Who do you think you are? I don't care two peanuts. Once I recognize that this is the truth, I am going to proclaim it, even if I am the only voice in the world. That is a student was trained by Maulana Fazlur Rahman Ansari. It is this capacity to defy the world that we lack today. People are too scared to move away from the traditional path.
That was a long sentence.
They may have been scholars who recognize that this tashkil is wrong, is false, that he is the knowledge of the hour, and that the right tashkil is he is the sign of the last hour. But they were scared. People would say, this man is saying there's a mistake in the Quran. And that's what they said about me, and they said I'm a kafir. But the difference between me and the rest is that there came upon me a moment in my life when I stopped being a green banana. And Allah gave me courage. And when He gave me that courage, now I say, I don't care two peanuts for what you say. I am concerned of being faithful to the truth which comes from Allah. The damage done by the bogus tashkil is enormous already on this subject of the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, but this is not the only one. After Al-Masih al-Dajjal and Ya'juj and Ma'juj, the next most important actor in Akhir Zaman is Dabbatul Ard. And Dabbatul Ard will consume the minsa of the staff of Sulaiman alayhi salam. And when Dabbatul Ard consumes the minsa of the staff, it will collapse. And when it does, then the jinn who are in chains would now realize that Sulaiman is dead. So you don't need a doctorate to understand that Dabbatul Ard is someone or something which can damage and destroy the minsa of the staff. But when the Quran said about Dabbatul Ard, taklimuhum, the Gog and Magog would damage them. Taklimuhum. The Dabbatul Ard would damage them. Taklimuhum. They changed the tashkil And the new Tashkil says that Dabbatul Ard tukallimuhum will now speak to them. And as a consequence, the understanding of Dabbatul Ard is corrupted. And so now we have a belief system. Somebody in Hollywood is going to make a movie of it someday, of termites who can speak. So this is the damage done by the bogus Tashkil. Next question.
The question is in two parts. The first one is, in our modern day, in which appearance and realities are opposite, how is it possible for a woman to choose her husband? How is it possible for a woman to choose the right husband based on the appearance? This is the first part.
It's not just the woman choosing her right husband, but the family is also involved if she's a young woman. If she's an elderly woman, it's different. But if she's a young girl who's never been married before, then it's not just her judgment, but the judgment of her family. And the family must exercise some maturity of thought. You don't choose a husband because he has plenty money. No. You don't choose him by what is external in him. You look first to see what is internal of him. What kind of qualities of faith and heart does he have? What kind of character he has? That is the first judgment from internal qualities. And then you look externally. Is this man pleasing to me in his appearance? Is he healthy? Does he have the capacity to maintain me? But if you have only stars in your eyes, you will not look to the internal, you look only to the external. And then the external is opposite to the internal. I used to be in the United States of America for 12 years. And I benefited tremendously from those 12 years I lived in the United States. I was asked to go to a certain prison in New Jersey once a week and conduct what was called an Islamic service. I had to first go to the men and then go to the women. When I go to the men, the hall would be packed to capacity, and all of them are black men. I asked, how many of you are Muslims? Only a few. What are you doing here? This is Islamic service. They are here in Islam to an Islamic service because they have a positive attitude towards Islam. That Islam is a religion which identifies with the oppressed and not the oppressor. And then I go to the women's section, and nearly all of them are white women, one or two black women. How many of you are Muslims? None. None? Why are you here? They answered me. They said, we perceive that your men protect your women. And we admire that. Our men don't protect us. Our men don't guard us and protect us. So one of the qualities that made Islam so attractive in the eyes of women in the United States was that Muslim men protect their women. Muslim men guard over their women. A woman could be walking on the streets of Brooklyn and men would harass her, use all kinds of language with her, even touch her, but not a Muslim woman. Nobody dares, no one dares to put your hand on a Muslim woman, not in Brooklyn. Because if you do that, the whole community of men will come upon you and tear you apart. So when you look for a husband, look for a man who can maintain you. Look for a man who can guard you and protect you and take care of you. And look for a man who has kindness in his heart. Look for a man who worships Allah. Next question.
Oh, the second part of the question was, what would you define, how would you define the perfect balance in between the spouses in Islamic marriage?
Allah created a man and he should remain a man. And Allah created a woman and she should remain a woman. Allah says in the Quran, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى. He takes an oath by the night, and that which it shrouds so mysteriously and covers so mysteriously. وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا تَجَلَّى. And he takes an oath by the day and by its bright light with nothing concealed. And then he declares, وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى. Yani, that in the same way that I created the night and the day, that is how I created the male and the female. So when you have a wife who is like the night, that in her company you get rest, you get peace, then you have a good marriage. But when you have a wife who is not happy to be the night and she wants to become the day, then you have a woman who is following the child and you're going to have a miserable marriage. What do we mean by the night trying to become day? The Quran continues to say, Inna sa'yakum lashatta, meaning the male and the female are functionally different. But the Dajjal came along to say that this is false. Men and women are not functionally different. Anything a man does, a woman can also do. So she can be a part of the armed forces. She can even be a general in the American Armed Forces. وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. And we gave you the night as a libas, that which covers, that which keeps you comfortable, that which protects you. And we gave you the day for work, and hence the functional difference between the male and the female. Men have been created for public life, not women. And so now we find this strange phenomenon of women abandoning their functional role. It's no longer mama at home. That happened with your grandmother. Mama is no longer at home taking care of the children when they come from school. Mama now has a career like Papa. And so now you need a slave to take care of the children. She's a slave because she works for a salary, no woman will work for. You have to look for the land of the slaves to find a woman who will now take care of the children, cook the food, take care of the house, so mama can pursue her career. Those children grow up, they are not fools. They know that mama and papa have betrayed us, have ignored our rights. So those children will never make the dua. رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. They will never make that dua. So if you have a husband and he is not maintaining you, or if you have a wife and she is no longer the night, she wants to become day, the best thing to do is to get out of that marriage. Next question.
You mentioned that the hadith, which mentions the 10 signs of the hour, they are not structured in chronological order. What is the order in which Dabbatul Ard will manifest, and what is your opinion on who or what is Dabbatul Ard?
This is not an easy question. I have offered an opinion and I can be wrong. So be careful. Do not accept my opinion unless you are convinced that I am correct. The Dabbatul Ard has to be something or someone who can damage and dismantle the min sa'a, the internal miraculous quality of the staff of Sulaiman alayhi salam. And I have come to the conclusion, and Allah knows best, that perhaps it is the electromagnetic waves with which we are now inundated all around the world, which makes the cell phone possible, the wireless internet possible, the GPS possible, okay? And this is already affecting bees because honey production is declining in the world. Number two, this is affecting not only bees, but small birds who have difficulty in navigating. And this is already damaging the memory of the children. And hence, I perceive that this has perhaps the potential of destroying the minsa of the staff. But what we now experience is peanuts compared to what is coming. When nuclear war takes place, the radiation that comes from the explosion of nuclear weapons, which will be so pervasive all over the world, that might be the moment when the minsa of the staff will collapse. The tragedy is that nobody is researching the subject properly. Why? Because they are all convinced that Dabbatul Ard is going to speak. No one is considering that Dabbatul Ard is that which damages. Next question.
So the question is, when this is going to take place, what is going to happen exactly, and where is Imam al-Mahdi and the Masih al-Dajjal in this?
When this is going to take place, meaning the Great War?
Meaning the destruction of the Minsa'a and consequence of the nuclear Great War.
The timeline of events in Akhir al-Zaman given by Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, which is most applicable at this time, is to be found in the hadith when he speaks with Mu'az ibn Jabal, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And this is what he said. عمران بيت المقدس خراب يثرب. خراب يثرب خروج الملحمة. خروج الملحمة فتح القسطنطينية. فتح القسطنطينية خروج الدجال. You can translate that? Yes, sir. I started with Umran Bayt al-Maqdis Kharab Yathrib. When Jerusalem is center stage, built up center stage, Yathrib or Medina will be for forlorn desolation. When Medina or Yathrib is in forlorn desolation, that is the time when the Great War will take place, the Malhama. When the Malhama takes place, the next event would be the conquest of Constantinople by a Muslim army. When the conquest of Constantinople takes place, only then and not before, Dajjal will now appear in human form. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not send back Nabi Isa alayhi salam until Al-Masih al-Dajjal has completed his mission. And Al-Masih al-Dajjal cannot complete his mission until Pax Judaica has been established and is the ruling state in the world. Then Al-Masih al-Dajjal will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, Ana al-Masih. Then his mission is complete. But before Allah sends back the Messiah, He teaches him the Quran and He gives him wisdom. وَيُعَلِّمُهُ الْكِتَابِ وَالْحِكْمَةِ وَالتَّوْرَاةِ وَالْإِنْجِيلِ, indicating two ummahs. One ummah following the Quran with the Sharia which comes from the Quran. One ummah following the Torah and the Gospel with the Sharia which comes from the Torah and the Gospel. And Allah gives an order in the Quran that those who turn in the correct direction of this Qibla must not turn to that Qibla. And those who are turning to this Qibla must not turn to that Qibla. Are you aware of this? Or is this the first time you're hearing it? Are you aware of this? Or is this the first time you're hearing it? This is in the Quran. That neither of you must turn to the other's Qibla. So he is returning to two communities. But before he can return to this community, which follows Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, this community must be restored to some measure of integrity. And so before Nabi Isa alayhi salam can return, Allah will send first the Imam al-Mahdi, who will restore the Khilafah state. And so the timeline of events is that Dajjal will now appear in human form. The Pax Judaica is established. and that is not possible without the Great War, and that is not possible without slavery. Slavery, enslavement, naked oppression. When Pax Judaica is established, and the Dajjal declares from Jerusalem, Ana al-Masih, only then and not before will Allah send the Imam. Only when the Imam is set and the Khilafah state is established in Makkah, only then will Nabi Isa alayhi salam return. When will Dabbatul Ard consume the minsar of the sun? No one knows the answer to that question, but we can think on the subject and offer an opinion. And my opinion is that it appears to me that it will be at the time of the Great War that the minsar will collapse. One last comment. The eschatology that I have pioneered is not Shia eschatology. If it has to be given a label, it has to be Sunni eschatology, not Shia. But I spent 4 hours in Qom, in Iran, with a gathering of Shia scholars of eschatology. They were the best in Iran. And the session lasted 4 hours. There was nothing hostile, nothing acrimonious, nothing disrespectful in those 4 hours of discussion. And my conclusion at the end of the 4 hours was that the Shiite eschatology to which I was exposed from these scholars was, to use the most appropriate word I could think of, deficient. We seem to have not only a different view of the subject of the Imam al-Mahdi, but one which is more harmonious with the totality of events occurring in Akhir Zaman than their view. I have found that the Shiite eschatology is not only deficient, but more than that, that our view of Imam al-Mahdi and the events surrounding his advent appears to be more in conformity with the totality of events of Akhir Zaman, harmoniously integrated than their eschatology. Perhaps I may hurt the feelings of some of the Shia who will be listening to me and following me. But my duty is to be faithful to truth. And secondly, this may perhaps explain why I no longer receive invitations to visit Iran.
He said, I want to thank Allah first for the chance to have you here and have these topics which are tremendously important for our time as eschatology. I want to thank the Sheikh for his coming and for the 6 conferences that he patiently delivered. I want to thank Muhammad Amin for the translation.
Not only translation, he's the one who organized it.
That's what I said. He said it. I'm being humble. Then he asked about the 12 books that you have translated in French. how can the people get them? Is it through me or through your website?
Just stay in touch with him, yeah.
Thank you to the chairman here, the responsible of the mosque, for allowing us to organize this week's conference in a very small city as Liusan. Alhamdulillah, and they are asking you for final dua.
ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك ربنا وتعاليت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم أرنا الأشياء كما هي اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا يا كريم اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من عذاب القبر ومن عذاب النار ونعوذ بك من فتنة المحيا والممات ومن فتنة المسيح الدجال وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلق محمد وعلى آله وعلى أصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
بارك الله فيك شيخ.
جزاك الله خيرا.